We're ready.
Okay, go.
Okay.
Welcome.
We're ready. Welcome. This
Then we're
the
back.
Genesse County Compassion Club show. It is January 23rd.
Yes.
And we are excellently proud to be here in FlintTalkRadio.com studios. There's
Always.
construction on site, construction in the area, so please
There
be
is.
wary. If you're driving, take caution.
Don't flush your toilet, people. Be careful.
As long as they're not on for Oklahoma, they're fine. But no.
I don't know. There was other areas.
They're doing work
There's
around here.
Water mains break like old arteries do around here, man.
Well,
in the wintertime.
It's been cold.
Yeah.
You might say freezing.
What is
Single digits.
Yeah. What is it today? What is today as far as the temperature?
Temp?
Yeah.
I can find that out.
I think I saw it a balmy 10 earlier today.
A balmy. That does make a difference when it's balmy. I'm not sure what difference.
It is exactly weather information currently unavailable.
Yes.
I'll get back with you on that.
As soon as I get online here, then we'll know. But anyways, this is not a weather show.
No, it's cold. We'll leave it at that. Let's move on.
And we're predicting cold in the future.
Yes.
All right. Hey, welcome. Thanks for being with us this week. We do have some information we want to share with you, some stuff that's going down at the club, the Genesse County Compassion Club, of course. So thanks for joining us today. Appreciate you being with us here in the freezing city. But hey, what do we got going on? What's up? I know that we were planning some classes. I know that DJ Short is coming to the club.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. What is going down?
I don't know when the next class is
Right
exactly.
now. I know that they're in February. Safe to say right now.
There's a
And of
hashtag
course,
coming up.
we're talking about the regular club classes.
Right.
But I
But
believe
the DJ Short Blueberry thing.
yes.
Yeah, DJ Short be around the 31st. He'll be in the club on the 31st, and
Oh yeah, I've got that
7th.
stuff. That's on Facebook actually. I'll
Is it?
pull that up. Yep. I've got his class stuff. But I was trying to remember. I know that I have a law class coming up. I know that's one class that's scheduled, and you guys can sign up for that at the front desk at the club.
Yes.
Over on the educational center side. I think you can also do so online. JR's got that rocking, I believe. So you can go to the website, www.genesse3c.com, for details on when and where that's at. Of course, it's at the club.
yes.
But yeah, that class is going to be about law. We're going to talk about, basically how to follow the law, the changes that just occurred to the law, so that you guys are up to date on that, and what you have to do accordingly. And then we're going to talk about some of the court cases that are going on. Let you know what the different situations are that are happening, like what are the gray areas that are being blackened and whitened, if you will.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's important.
absolutely. I mean, we need to know, especially those of us who are caregivers, because there's a certain element of, I guess, legal risk, if you will. I mean, those of us who are involved understand that federally it's still illegal, so that's certainly a concern.
Well,
You
we
know what
want
I
to
mean?
stay. Yeah, we want to stay within the law, so we need to know what that is exactly. Can't do
Well,
that.
and, the
It's not like they
president
send out
said-
a flyer.
Despite it's been like 4 years now or whatever, and we've had no real affirmation. But he did say if you're following the state law, you should be okay. So I think that's really what we want to try to do,
Yeah.
of course. And so that's what we're going to talk about. To try to make sure we maintain that, and to make sure you're up to date. Of course, we want to provide that anyways at the club. So if you guys ever have questions about legal stuff like that, like
Right.
how do I transport medication with this new law change? That's something you're wondering about. I know any one of the staff members down there at the club is probably more than adequately prepared to answer that for you.
Oh, yes.
And a lot of the caregivers and other members around there also are well equipped to give you the information you're seeking. But for the more extended version of those explanations, if you want to, you can take the class. All right?
Yes.
So check that out on the website, and hopefully we'll have more classes scheduled. If you guys have some ideas as far as what classes you'd like to see, give us suggestions. We got the suggestion box there
Yep.
at the club. Anything you'd like to have information about, we'd be glad to dig up for you. Or if we don't have an expert on that, we'll find one. I mean, whatever it takes. We want to be able to provide current, valid information that you guys can use. And so we need to know what it is that you're interested in, what you'd like to find out about, and then we'll figure out how we can provide that back to you at a low, affordable cost, which is what the classes are all about.
Yep.
So
yeah, that's interesting. See what kind of classes we get in the suggestion box.
Yeah, I mean, obviously within reason, but I would like to see if we had some more less broad, more narrow type of classes. Like somebody said, well, I know you guys did a cloning class. What if you guys would be willing to do some sort of a plant manipulation class where you actually teach techniques on how to maximize your harvest?
Right. That's awesome.
Something like that. There's different things that we can easily put together, and we just need to know what it is you want to see.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, DJ Short, you're saying, Toby?
Yep.
Let me pull up
his class, I believe, is the 4th, but he's going to be there the Thursday before and after in the club.
That's right.
Hanging out.
Yep. So January 31st, Thursday, and also February 7th, which is a Thursday, he's going to be there at the club, chilling.
Yes.
That's right. I believe he's going to have his genetics with him, hopefully. Yep. So, and then also his class is, let's see, February 4th. I'm reading off the Facebook page. I'm cheating.
That's all good. Yeah. Can't remember everything, man.
But yeah, it's February 4th, which is Monday. The class is a 3-hour class. I believe what I've been told is that he's planning on doing like part of the class, sort of like a meet and greet, where you guys will get to take a minute to get to know DJ, which
comfortable.
Would be really be cool.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd like to be a part of that. And then he's going to have an actual formal educational part of the class. And then I think he's going to have some type of maybe question and answer afterwards or something along those lines.
Yeah, for questions that maybe he didn't cover or whatever. Yeah, I'm sure he's just like us. He wants everybody to have the right information. So,
absolutely. So you guys can sign up for that. I know we already have people signing up for that class.
Oh, yeah.
And then there is limited seats in that class. So if you guys want to see DJ, you want to have a chance to talk with a world-class guy, somebody that I think most of us have a pretty high amount of respect for.
Yep.
Kind of goes without saying. But anyways, you guys want to sign up for that, do so at the club, front desk, or online. And again, it's February 4th, which is a Monday. That's the day that the club's not open, so it's going to be just for the class that we're going to be doing this. So it's
$50 for members.
Okay.
$100 for non-members, and a $20 deposit, I think, to get your seat. I believe that's the dealio. I haven't taken one yet myself, but it should happen. I'm sure it's going to fill up fast.
I think we already have
we're probably like half full already.
Well, that's cool. Well, hopefully those of you that want to get in on that have a chance to. So, all right. Sorry, I'm cooking it out.
Cookie time.
And now we're going to take a cookie break. Please enjoy this moment of silence or crunching. Just kidding. All right, we do have some information. I know that the state hearing for expanding the conditions list is this week. So if you guys want to see that, you can go online. You can watch it online at michigan.gov. You're going to have to do some searching to find it, but it's there. Or you can go there. It's at the Michigan State Library down in Lansing.
Yep.
I believe it is on, I want to say it's on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. Give me a minute here, I'll pull it up here and confirm that. But anyways, this hearing is
soon.
That's right, this week. And it is, they're looking at expanding and adding PTSD and also Parkinson's disease. So if you had either one of those conditions, then you would also qualify for cannabis use in Michigan, along with the other conditions that we already have. So
as they should.
You would think so. I mean, Parkinson's disease, obviously life-threatening.
Yep.
Certainly
debilitating.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to see people have whatever relief it is that them and their doctors seek. And then also PTSD. We found, obviously, we know from our experience.
Oh yeah.
At the club that we have a lot of folks there that say, hey, I didn't really get cannabis for that in particularly, but however, I do suffer from that and have found that cannabis has been incredibly useful in alleviating that particular symptom or symptoms created by the PTSD. So I think based on anecdotal evidence that we've seen at the club, it's undeniable that it certainly is beneficial.
Right. Well, for something, if people have medicated before with marijuana, they know, what it helps. Most people would benefit from it.
Absolutely. I guess the question is there medical evidence that's going to support that? I know that the first hearing, there were a few doctors that were, I think that the first hearing, Parkinson's disease was overwhelmingly approved by the council there, the doctors that had come together and the other people that are part of the panel. So they do a vote. They posted their opinions online, and you can view those at the Michigan State's website. You're going to have to do some searching to find that as well, but if you Google it, you'll find it. And you can see comments on there. You can also post your own comments, which I would encourage you to take a look at that. And if you feel that you have some worthy information as to why these conditions should or should not be approved or added, to the conditions list, and this is your opportunity to publicly post that to the state's website.
Yes.
And they said they will take comments into consideration. So I'd encourage
awesome.
Those of you that have info,
participate.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
Or you can go to the hearing and you can give a public comment there verbally. You can hand it in written. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that you guys can participate if you want to. But at any rate, they're going to take these comments into consideration, and that's what they're going to talk about at this next meeting. And then they're going to do another vote, I believe. Right. And initially their vote was yes on Parkinson's, that they would approve that and adding it as a condition for medical marijuana. And then their second vote was a nay or a no for PTSD. And at first, when they took a vote, it was, I believe, 5-4. So it was a pretty even split. And when Parkinson's was given an approval, initially, and it's not been approved, but just in the first stage here, I think the vote on that was like almost 10-1 or 9-2 or something like that. So it was pretty strongly in favor. But when it came to PTSD, the council or panel was pretty well split. They also, interestingly enough, after voting, gave time for public comment right then and there at the previous meeting that was held back in January.
Right.
And after a few people spoke, it was interesting that there was quite a few of the people on the panel that wished to, at that time, take a revote of their initial vote, knowing that even so there would be a future vote coming up that would give them an opportunity to change their minds. Knowing that, many of the people on that panel wanted to revote their initial vote after hearing the public comment about PTSD comments, and that specifically, not being approved by the panel. There was a couple people that spoke very passionately about their use for cannabis and alleviating the symptoms of PTSD and also simply the drastic ailments that are associated with PTSD. They kind of talked about that a little bit, which I wasn't even aware to the extent that some of these people spoke of.
Well, that was probably the problem. Yeah, they were either unaware or misinformed.
Yeah. But you could see that the panel felt like they even said themselves, we feel educated after just hearing these people, and we would like to revote now. And I actually didn't even bother sticking around because it was quite irrelevant. They do have more time to vote. Right. But ultimately, it did end up going with their initial votes. I don't know if they did that by vote or if they just decided to keep their first vote. Right. But if you go to the website, you'll see that they initially did approve Parkinson's and they did not approve PTSD. So this is the opportunity for us as a public to say yay or nay whether they should approve these and give reasons why or why not. Right. And then the council is going to take another opportunity to vote again. And then their vote will then be it'll go through sort of an approval process by their own right. Provided everything stays the same, status quo, it would then go to the director of the department, who would then actually give the approval of whether or not to, based on their recommendations, add these conditions or not add these conditions. So it still has a long way to go through the process, but this is the time now for public comment to happen. So if you know someone, maybe you have a patient, or maybe you're someone yourself, that suffers from Parkinson's or PTSD, and maybe you're using cannabis or you would like to be able to consider using cannabis for alleviating those symptoms, this is the time now to speak.
Yep. Or don't even want to, but just think that other people should have the option.
That too. If you're not necessarily related, but you just feel strongly about it, obviously, I would encourage you to take part. I mean, this is a way to take part in your civic duty. Right. This is a way to be a good citizen, if you will. Mm-hmm. But it's also a way to stand up for what you believe in if you do feel strongly about that sort of an issue. So I would encourage you to do that if you can, and hopefully we'll see that these conditions do get added. I know I strongly believe that there's no reason why we shouldn't allow a physician to make the choice simply to say whether or not someone should have the ability to use this as a medicine to alleviate their symptoms. I mean, when you think about that's actually what we're saying yes to. Right. And we're not really just saying yes, everybody who has PTSD should smoke weed.
Correct.
That's not what we're saying.
Yeah.
We're saying yes to this process should be available as a by right of freedom and being able to access your choice of medication based on the necessity of your symptoms through the professional, status quo symbol of a doctor, the gatekeeper in a sense,
right,
still existing, not just some free form over the counter. Come on. I mean, how could you say no?
Yeah, they deserve the option.
Absolutely.
I mean, two people with the same disease might not benefit the same way from it. They might, you know what I mean?
Well, and that's just it. And, some of the physicians there were saying, well, you have to look and weigh the pros and the cons of approving and allowing the use of a specific medication for the treatment of symptoms. And by looking at the pros and cons, making your decision to say, okay, well, these particular cons or pros will outweigh the other. And I have looked at those, and I have considered the cons that are presented. And some of those cons are, your typical cons, which I was very disappointed to hear that they were even presented as an argument in this context. And one of those was, like the physical addiction, the argument of the schizophrenia, other misnomers that have been associated with cannabis use,
right,
or prolonged cannabis use, certain physical detrimental effects of cannabis use because of the ingestion method were also associated with just the general use of this as a medication, which I find that to be incredibly an uneducated point of view by a very well-educated man. You would think that people would understand that, hey, you're absolutely right. Smoking cannabis for certain people is absolutely the wrong way to deliver that medication to their system.
Yeah, 100%.
And we agree. But to say that they shouldn't have access to it because they might ingest it in that method is just simply asinine.
Well, I don't know what they're scared of. It's not like other new medications and pills that the doctors are just going to throw at that problem.
Well, and they brought that up too. One of the things is commonly addressed in these contexts are dosages. How do you know what that patient is actually getting? You have such a wide range of cannabinoids that are being delivered at unmonitored levels, that are going to be ingested on different, levels based on a person's cannabinoid receptors and their body fat and their body types, so on and so forth. And you're absolutely right. But the counter form to that question, I believe, is the fact that in no way, shape, or form is cannabis proven to be harmful or lethal.
Right.
So I guess what I'm saying is, okay, well, yeah, maybe you do end up delivering certain types of chemicals into the bloodstream that don't necessarily need to be there and are not particularly useful to the treatment of the ailment. Mm-hmm. However, their effects are not damaging. So what's the problem? I mean, as far as side effects go, let's talk about real side effects.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like someone having anxiety, or maybe they have hunger, maybe they have dry mouth, or maybe they have paranoia. Yeah. These are the immediate side effects associated with cannabis. Am I missing any?
Not that I can think of.
John?
Not that I can recall. No,
I got hunger.
Oh, yeah, hunger.
But it's like, another thing is, too, I always thought the paranoia, when somebody's smoking weed when I was growing up in high school with them and stuff, it largely comes from the fact that they're doing something that's considered illegal.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the reason why the paranoia was.
Cannabis is associated as a forbidden fruit. So if that didn't exist, would we have the associated paranoia? I'm not sure. I think that I've found now that since I've become a legal, card holder, and that has since subsided. You know what I mean? I'm no longer paranoid in the regard that I don't have to worry about someone kicking in my door the minute that I'm medicating. You know what I mean? So I guess, not to say that it doesn't exist because I'm a caregiver. I'm still scared that cops are going to come get me in any minute. The feds do that to people.
Yeah.
So it's a fear you live with, unfortunately. But for the most part, that's subsided, John. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not really an overwhelming thing that I think about. And what I've found is that since that passed away, there were certain points when I was able to find medication levels that I hadn't found before. And so paranoia normally would have set in.
Right.
And what I found is that, it's actually not a paranoia that sets in. It's more of a reckoning feeling that happens when you do get over-medicated. And it's almost like one of those things where, like, if you've been lying about something, or maybe you're not being truthful to someone else, or, you know what I mean? Like, all of a sudden you get this wave of, like, guilt. You know what I mean? And it's quite profound. The effect that it has, and I think that it plays out as paranoia because that's the immediate thing that you think about is, oh, this is wrong. I'm doing something that's illegal. Somebody's going to come and get me.
Right. Or like John's saying, like more like the public setting. You being medicated, and it's not okay before when it was illegal, and you just didn't want everybody to know. So that definitely adds to the paranoia. Am I cool? I get through the grocery store without people freaking out on me, because I smell like herb.
And I think to a degree that still exists. Like you have people that are concerned they're going to smell like it. even though they need it for themselves as a
Right.
medication. They don't want to be known as a stoner because, they're not that kind of a person. They're not a careless, irresponsible person that people associate as being
stereotypical.
Yes, stoner.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely wrong. People are not that way because they medicate. People are that way because they choose to be that way. And I know a lot of people that are irresponsible and lackadaisical, and they don't medicate. They're just lazy.
Did you see the Facebook page posting? Somebody put up all the other drugs, Valium, Percocet, Darvocet, all the, in case of accidental overdose, what's the action? Call poison center. Call poison center. When you got to marijuana, call pizza delivery. It's like,
and that's the truth. I actually had an incident with one of our club members, and their pet had gotten into some medicated items, and they ate it. And of course, canines are going to react a little bit differently, being the fact that they have zero, in their system.
Right.
So it's the first time, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're going to get real high.
Yeah.
And, the doggone animal ate up the whole doggone tray. It's doggone, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so little Fluffy was lit up, you know what I mean? And little Fluffy didn't look so good. It was kind of scary.
Right.
So they called the vet, and the vet said, well, I don't know. Hang on. I'm going to have to do some research. And they called him back the next morning, actually, because it took them a while to do some digging. And they said, yeah, actually, no, there's nothing. I'm sorry I couldn't call you back, but it took me that long to find an answer. And come to find out, there's nothing you do for it. You just let them sleep it off. Essentially, your dog is just stoned as can be, and it's not going to hurt it. If anything, if it gets too far, it might vomit.
Might get nauseous
but
or something.
Other than that, it's not going to end up hurting it or having any brain damage or anything afterwards. There's nothing you need to worry about.
Yep.
And and they said it may last up to 3 or 4 days in the animal because of the fact that it's going to take that long to work its way back out, and they don't have anything in their body prior to that. But the fact is that all mammals have cannabinoid receptors.
Yes.
So it's not that all mammals have the ability to light up a doobie.
Of course not.
But they certainly all have the ability to ingest cannabinoids. And their body knows what to do with them naturally, and their body also produces their own cannabinoids inside of them. Every single mammal does. That's what an endocannabinoid is. It's your body producing cannabinoids inside of you on its own. And sometimes people's bodies don't do it as well as others. And so by regulating that through cannabis use, you can find and achieve, a better plateau or a platform to sort of coexist on.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of cool.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. That shouldn't be regulated as much as it is.
You shouldn't regulate the regulator.
Why you regulating me, man?
That's right.
Keeping me
true.
down. Don't tread on me.
All right. Well, our good buddy, our cohort, our
Partner in crime.
partner in crime, he is out on the slopes, hopefully enjoying himself, hopefully carving edges,
Yeah.
hopefully nailing some pow. And
big smile on his face.
yes, it's right here. That's his smile.
Yep.
It's so big.
Ripping it up.
Ripping it up in 7 degrees. I hope he's warm.
Landing every jump.
Yep. I hope he brought his hand
heaven.
warmers, and
Just
I
heaven.
hope his pinky don't hurt. You know how that can be a real bitch. It's all fun and games till your pinky's blown out.
Yep.
Yeah, and you don't know till it happens to you what a pinky can do. That's what I'm saying. All right, so we got anything else on the agenda? Anything else I forgot about happening down at the club?
Not that I can think of.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's running really smooth, man. Everybody's been coming and seeing us every day.
Cool. Glad to hear it. I know that we've still been doing some home improvement projects, if you will,
Yep.
here and there.
Yep, for sure. It's an ongoing process. But still working on the other side. That should be up and going. Hoping to get the plant lab going pretty soon.
Cool. I know you guys been having your meetings, club meetings. That's all going well. You got your
Right.
ambassadors going on.
Yep. It helps out. People are actually going to them with issues. So
That's cool.
it works, It was
Yeah.
a good idea, whoever's idea that was.
I have no idea. Every time I think of the word ambassador, I can't help but see the bridge in my head, just like, and it's night. It's kind of cold and foggy. There's the lights on it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm with you, man. Visually.
Ambassador.
Ambassador.
Or I see like some kind of Indian looking dude in a suit, like, "Duka, duka, duka." Yes, I do.
It's nice.
Yeah. Or he's French. Like, you'd be a good French ambassador.
Oui.
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 So you just keep saying,
yeah, ambassador.
Weed. Nice. All right. News. We talked about the hearing, so you guys know what's up with that. Let me see what else I can find on here. If there's anything else kind of news going on. What's going on in like regular news outside of marijuana news?
Got me there, dude. I don't watch TV.
Well, you don't have to watch TV to know what's going on in the
people
news.
talking about things here and there, but yeah, it's like the TV. Like,
all right, anything
walking by,
interesting?
so.
What's interesting going on in your mind right now, Toby? Share with us.
Right now?
Yeah.
This second?
Yeah.
Oh no. Actually, I'm thinking about many things, man. It works on my mind, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's about it.
Right
So,
on.
that's horrible.
Yeah, but you do a lot of work.
I do work.
Yeah.
And it's really cold, and I don't want to go outside.
Well, you won't be working outside then, hopefully.
Wishing the show was longer so you could just sit in here. It's pretty nice in here. Nice and cozy. We need a couch. Better lounge
A couch would
area.
be nice. I could go for a couch. And
Kick back, little couch, coffee table situation.
Mm.
Coffee time.
I'm trying to find some notes here. There's a court case, a couple different court cases going on. There's also a handful of court cases going on right now where they're talking about different pinpoints of the law, like how do you manage this from a law enforcement standpoint. One of those things that they're really discussing is the material that caregivers come in contact with. You know, it's kind of obvious, when somebody has usable material in some cases, you know what I mean? Like if it's rolled up in a joint form,
Right.
chances are it's usable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
If it's in a mason jar, though, is it usable? And I know as a
No.
caregiver, you're clearly going to tell me, well, no, not necessarily. And that's absolutely right. We who are in the biz, if you will, perfectly understand why that may or may not be usable. And for the most part, most of the patients now that have been medicating for a good while, at least medicating through the use of smoking bud, okay?
Right.
However it is that you may smoke it, whether it's vaporization or incineration, if you will. But despite that, yeah, there's certain points where the product is unusable and it is usable.
Yes.
And then I think there's also probably a debate in that, just in who you talk to. So, for example, Toby, if I ask you if a product is usable, what are you going to tell me is your determining factors as a patient for if I were to give you something, a product, and tell you, here it is, you tell me if it's usable or not. And let's say, for example, we're not calling into question the quality here.
Right.
We're calling into question simply the usability. Is it ready or not? Is it in the form or not that it needs to be for you to be able to ingest that? So I'm giving you a bud. Here's his bud. Here you go. And
That's
is
a
that
nice bud.
usable?
It's a nice bud.
All right.
Well,
I got my bud over here.
I would have to have some sort of apparatus to use that. If you're going on a level of curing, that'd be a different situation. If it was ready to be to the point to use.
Okay, so let me take the lid off. Here. Check it out a little further. Look in the jar.
Yes. No chlorophyll.
That's
smell.
actually my new strain. It's called Girl Scout Cookies.
It does. It smells like cookies, man. You're doing
Actually,
a good job.
I'm sorry. It's Christmas cookies.
It's Christmas cookies. Yeah. This is butter cookie.
They got about a 3-week cure.
They are nice and dry. They're very dry. The stem's snapping here, so
Right.
yeah, we're
Okay.
good.
So it is dry.
It is dry.
All right. So does that make it usable because it's dry and the stem snapped?
That makes it. No, I mean it depends on.
I mean, you hope
needs
it's
some
usable,
cure
right?
time. Right. I mean,
Okay. So what's the next step for you to decide as a patient? You snap the stem. All right. First thing it is, he took it and he looked at it. Right. Step one.
I did.
Right. All right. So even if you're blind, you're gonna go step one. Right.
Yes.
Step two, we take the lid off. Right. This is again we're dealing with. Pretend it's a mason jar and there's bud in here.
Okay.
All right. Christmas cookie strain.
Butter cookie. Christmas
Take
butter
the lid off. Next step. What'd you do?
I smelled it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you use your first sense would be sight if you have it.
Right.
Second sense would be your sense of smell if you have it. Okay. Now let's hope you have those two. Now let's say you don't. So what's the next step? You picked it up. You touched it. So now you used your third sense, right? And you snapped the stem.
Stickiness.
What were you doing now? Say that again.
Checking for moisture content. See if it was done or sticky.
So if it was sticky, what would you say? If it's sticky, what do you do?
That's a good thing.
Okay, but is there different kinds of sticky? What if I pick it up and it's like kind of wet, mushy?
If it's wet and sticky, that's a bad thing.
Okay. So is there? Are we just talking about sticky, or are we talking about wet?
Talk about THC content for the most part.
Well, how do you tell me THC content? You didn't gas chromatograph that. You don't know what you're talking about.
No. I'm talking visually, just looking for.
Oh, so we're going back to the look. We're going back to the sight sense, right?
I guess look and feel at the same time.
Okay, so we're going back to the sight sense. He used his sense of sight first. All right. So now he uses his sense of feel, and yes, it's sticky is a factor, correct?
Yeah.
But it's not the factor in seeing whether or not it's usable.
No.
Okay. Thank you. Now, what'd you do? You picked the bud up.
Then I felt it and snapped the stem.
Okay, so and then it was dry. It kind of felt dry to the touch.
Yep.
And then why did you snap the stem?
To see if all the moisture had been out of it and they had spent some time curing it, at least, yes.
Okay, so if it snaps, what does that mean?
It's dry.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's not going to
done.
So if it doesn't snap, what does that mean?
It needs more cure time.
So why is it not snapping?
Moisture.
Because it's still kind of wet.
Yes.
So at first he kind of touches it. First he sees it. Then why did you smell it? Just to see if it smells good, or?
Yeah, that's just a preference thing of chlorophyll. I guess that would be the
Yeah,
first
you just
sign.
kind of want to, it's like
See
putting
how
food in
fresh
your
it
mouth,
is.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
You're going to put that in your mouth, essentially,
Yeah.
right? It might be wrapped in paper first, but you're going to put it in your mouth.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's only instinct to
Smoke.
smell it first if you have a sense of smell. So then you touch it. It's sticky, but sticky isn't really going to tell me or him whether or not it's done or ready.
Right.
But it is going to I'm not really checking to see if it's sticky. I mean, I am. I hope it's sticky. But I'm also checking for moisture. If it's wet to the initial touch, what are you going to do? You're probably just going to put it right back in the jar, isn't it? You're not even going to bother snapping a stem.
No.
You don't need to. It's not ready. So, and then the next thing is, it feels kind of dry. You grab a stem, you feel for the stem, you snap it. Hopefully it snaps. If it snaps, it is at least dry enough to what?
Yes.
To proceed in your next step of process to find out if you can ingest it, right?
To taste it, yes. You have to taste it.
Okay, so the next thing you do is taste it.
You have to break it up and
Okay,
smoke
so
it.
if it's dry enough, now he's going to break it up. He's going to go ahead and continue processing the cannabis, right?
Yes.
No different than the guy who sat there and trimmed it in the first place. It's all part of the processing.
Right.
Okay, so now he's got it processed. It's rolled up in a doobie. You light that sucker up. Now what do you do?
I'm tasting it.
You're going to check it out, right?
Taste it.
So really the only way to figure out if that is usable or not is for that patient to actually see if he can use it.
Correct.
You see the point I'm trying to make here?
Mm-hmm.
You cannot tell me if your cannabis is usable unless your patient can use it. And I know that just seems too simple. I know that that's a really hard standard to put across the board in a legal sense and in a courtroom and then for law enforcement to be able to see. But unfortunately, that is the only real way for you as a patient to figure out whether or not it's usable.
Yep.
That's the sad part about this, folks, is that we are trying to create some type of a legal parameter around something that is going to constantly change. And tell me this, Toby, are there certain strains that you've been provided, to in the past, given to you, that, it was certainly usable to someone else, but was it usable to you? Have you had that experience?
Yes, I've had that many times.
Okay, so there's certain strains that were usable. Scientifically, they were usable. They were combustible, let's say, right?
Moisture still in it. It burn hot, burn your lips.
So it's usable to someone,
right?
Right. So I guess let's back it up a little bit, all right? And let's say, for example, that it is dry enough, all right, and it is let's say it is your type of medication. Mm-hmm. So at what point did that cannabis become usable to you? When you ingested it? When you rolled it up, when you first got it.
When I ingested it.
So then it became usable at that point. Okay, so but how do I define that as a law enforcement officer if you're sitting there with 5 pounds of this stuff
Right.
and you just found out, hey, it's usable? Because a half an hour ago you tried it for me and it wasn't usable. It was choking you. Or let's just say figuratively, yesterday it wasn't dry enough.
Right.
And you went to go smoke it, or you went to
Good
snap
point.
the stem and it didn't snap. Or whatever it was. But you know as well as I do, sometimes that can be a 24-hour period. Especially in the wintertime when you have humidity levels down around 20-30% that suck humidity out just like that.
Yeah.
You know, summertime might be different. You might have a lot longer of a span for that cannabis to dry out. Now, you mentioned something else that's kind of interesting that we have yet to even talk about in a legal platform, and that's curing. And for those of us that are connoisseurs or those of us that are even patients, are starting now to understand the importance of what curing is. And I think we haven't even yet begun to understand what the science is behind it and how it is either benefiting or maybe not benefiting patients. I don't think we really honestly know enough about it to really say yay or nay, which is one better than the other. We know that cannabinoids are formed inside of trichomes. And that trichomes are formed of a resinous substance that will biodegrade over time based on exposure to oxygen. Also based on exposure to temperature and light. Okay? So, based on this degradation thing that occurs, that's one thing that's going to happen. But that process stops after the oxygen that is present is used up. So that is one process in itself, and you guys all know that is decarboxylation.
Right.
Okay? And we assist this process when we combust it. That's a form of decarboxylation as well.
Right.
Some of us will go ahead and go through the steps of heating the product up in the oven to continue the decarboxylation process or to complete it or to further it. And then we simply infuse it into our food products and then ingest it from there. Right? So there's different ways that this happens. But there's another process that occurs during curing and most people don't know about or don't talk about. And the question is whether or not this is really essential to whether or not it makes cannabis a usable product. Because the fact of the matter is the scientific process of curing cannabis is not done on probably close to, and I'm guessing here, of course, but I would say close to 95 to 97% of the cannabis that is ingested by patients today.
For sure.
The majority of the patients that ingest cannabis through the means of combustion or vaporization are doing so with products that are not cured. Okay? Curing is something that happens in the lack of the presence of oxygen. It only occurs in that form.
Right.
And curing, what it is it's a process of anaerobic bacteria forming in an area and then processing the chemicals and compounds that are present in the cannabis. This creates and does a whole lot of different things, and the process is very similar like what's found in wine or in cigars. So we've seen this curing or anaerobic bacteria. That's really what we're trying to do is we're trying to create anaerobic bacteria inside of the cannabis when we're curing our cannabis. So in the past, when we were told by growing forums and high times to burp our jars, we were told to do that because of the fact that a lot of times we put the cannabis in there before it was dry.
Right.
And it needed to continue to allow for evaporation so that we didn't have mold.
Well, yeah, you don't want to do that.
You know, and I screwed up many times and molded batches, entire ounces or more inside of a mason jar and, you know, opened it up and it smells like a box of litter or cat piss.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it smells like window cleaner and it's just ruined. There's no bringing it back. There's no getting rid of that smell. It is just, it's trash. And, you know, I've done that. So I've found that process for me doesn't work. I don't do that anymore. But I know that we used to do that, and we used to confuse that process with curing. We thought that by putting it in the jar, doing this burping process after we did the paper bag process, that, you know, going into the jar was going to somehow, you know, this burping was going to make this curing thing happen. And the fact of the matter is that's absolutely false because of the fact that when we did that, we were allowing fresh oxygen back into the jar and stopping the anaerobic bacteria from occurring. I can tell you that on average, when you have a jar that is, and I don't mean packed, I mean simply packed, full of cannabis, it will take approximately 7 to 10 days, depending on bud density and so forth, for the plants to continue processing their life forms, and use up the oxygen that's remaining inside of that mason jar. It takes 7 to 10 days for that to happen. That's why heard people in the past say, okay, once it's done burping, jar it up and don't touch it for 2 weeks. And that's why. But after 2 weeks, the process has only begun. And that's what people don't understand. This anaerobic bacteria has only started to form at that time because it took that long for the oxygen inside of the mason jar to be used up by the degradation of the chlorophyll in the leaves that continues to break down after you've cut the plant down. So you understand why the curing now makes it taste good. Because your plant is continuing to process the sugars in it into proteins, which then transform the chlorophyll in the leaves and break those down into different sugars and enzymes. So your plant no longer tastes like a piece of grass, and now it tastes like a really flavorful, tasteful, fruitful, whatever it is, bud.
Yes.
And that's the process of curing. And this process occurs during the initial drying stage, but it can be affected by different things. And in fact, I was having a conversation with one of our caregivers at the club today about this process of drying, because the drying process also is a really unique step, really important step in the process of making the cannabis usable.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Many different ways. People have many different ways of drying.
It's different based on how you trim. We have certain people who will hang their plants from the point of when they've been harvested to the point of when they're dry. And there's different steps along the way. You can remove the fan leaves or the sweet leaf, whatever it is you want to do. Right. You know what I mean? I think the important thing is if you're doing that, you're going to make sure that the buds aren't draping against each other for a chance of mold.
Of course.
But obviously good air circulation is important. Having the right temperature is key. And that's one of the conversations we were talking about, is that how that temperature during the drying stage is vital. And it is, because of the fact that those sugars, in the process of breaking things down, that process will be sped up or slowed down by temperature. So I've found that I had problems in the past where my buds, after I trimmed them and put them in processing trays to dry, they were in areas that were dark, but they were not cool. They were probably getting up to temps of around 85 degrees. And it would change the color of my bud in about 3 days. A couple of times I did it wrong. The first couple of times, my rooms would get up warmer into 90 degrees. This is when I was first getting started, and of course we all have problems. So, maybe it was even a little warmer at times. But at any rate, my bud would go from a beautiful, healthy green to looking like it was golden, overnight. And I thought, wow, what the F happened here? You know what I mean? And then I noticed, because of the fact that I had gotten my temps to come down to about 85, and the same thing was happening, but it was happening over a 4 or 5 day period now. And then I noticed that once I got rid of the temperature problem and continued drying in the same fashion in the same spot, that I didn't have that going on anymore. My bud stayed green.
Right.
Okay, temperature really does matter when you're drying. So, and then in fact, we had found the same case here. This bud had done the opposite. It was in a very cold area when it was drying, and it actually had caused it to darken. But it had the same effect in the sense that it stopped that chlorophyll from continuing to process, and it left it with a sort of a grassy sort of overtone to the taste and so forth.
Right.
And I don't know that it necessarily affects the quality. I'm sure it has something to do with the degradation process of the cannabinoids and the resin that's present there.
Right.
But to what extent, I'm not sure. It certainly isn't going to make it disappear by any means.
No.
But to the smoking person, it is going to make a difference. One that's normally going to be a little bit less desirable than the product that hasn't had that process occur.
Yep.
I think you can take that and use that in a countless different medicinal ways, but it might not be necessarily the best one to use for a smoking experience at that point. Exactly. I know that when I was stuck with that, it's like you use what you got. You know what I mean? So you do what you do. And that's the thing, is we got to go through these learning processes. I had to go through mine to figure out what I was doing wrong.
I used a dehydrator back in the day, to speed up the process.
Sure, I've stuck it in the oven. I know back old school, I did microwaves. Hair dryer, you name it, man. If it was, we thought it was time to harvest.
Microwave, 3 seconds at a time.
Yeah, short of plucking it off the vine and eating it,
Right.
But at any rate, it's neat to learn, and we have to continue to press on learning and stuff. And I think that curing process is important. But to get back to our original conversation about when is it usable, I think that we have to admit to ourselves that curing is not necessarily going to be your dividing legal line to whether or not something's cured or to whether or not something's usable, because of the fact that the majority of the cannabis that's on the market shelf, whether it be here or Colorado or California, it doesn't matter where you're at, is not going to actually be scientifically, if you will, cured. You're not going to find anaerobic bacteria on that cannabis because it never was in that presence. Or if it was, it wasn't there very long. And cannabis that is cured will have been, in that presence for 7 to 10 days.
Right.
Again, with the lid not having been removed in that mason jar, and it will continue to stay in that state now with anaerobic bacteria beginning to form and to do its beautiful things that it does to the terpenes and to the flavonoids in there that are going to wake that bud up and make it taste so good.
Right.
And make it be so smooth.
Through the whole joint or bowl.
Oh,
or
just
whatever.
every single pull, and it's going to have that clean burn. The other thing that it does is it really smooths it out so that the person who is smoking it can enjoy the experience without having the harsh backlash.
Yeah,
some of those smokes, some of those smokes really have that really deep ability to expand. And a lot of that will go away over time. And it's those other chemicals in there that need time to break down. And when I say chemicals, folks, I'm not talking about ortho.
This ain't,
You know what I mean? I'm talking
Dow.
about, nutrients like potassium and calcium and stuff like that. When you smoke that, think about it. If you lined up some calcium, rolled it up,
Right.
what would it be like to smoke calcium? Probably not
Harsh.
too good.
Hot.
So
Yeah.
you need time for those things to break down and to allow that anaerobic bacteria to do what it does, to wake those things up. And, that's going to happen after it's been in that process. And then you're going to leave it in that jar for, at least a minimum of 30 days. Do I do that with every one of my buds? No, I
Of course
can't.
not.
I can't.
Yeah.
And it's like, it takes us back to that legal question of, man, if I did have the right to say, you know what, no. None of my patients are ever going to get anything from me that I don't feel is 100% prepared for them in the best possible fashion that is humanly available. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I want to give to my patients. That's what I want to give to myself, so they don't deserve anything less than what I would do for myself. And you know what? I wish that I could do that, but I don't because, number one, I don't have the ability to do that. I feel like I'd put myself and my family in deep jeopardy by having the kind of volume and inventory it would require in order to maintain their uninterrupted supply and maintain the fact that I need all of these things in order. Literally, if you think about it, you need to have your cannabis supply for your patients. It would have had to have been sitting in a mason jar, tucked away in about 65 to 75 degree environment in the dark, in a mason jar, dried, mind you.
Right.
You can roll it up and smoke it, okay? And it's going to get you high.
Right.
All right? But is it usable to my standard of usable, to my medicinal standard that I should be providing? No, it is absolutely not. And how much would I have to have in order to maintain that? I'd have to have a lot.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about a minimum of 7 to 10 days for anaerobic to begin, and a minimum of a 30-day process to allow it to work.
Right.
And we have found that with strains it will vary. Some strains, 30 days, it is not going to get any better.
Right.
Other strains could take up to 120 days. And I've heard in some rare cases of it taking longer, but I do believe that there's a cannabinoid breakdown that's also going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, oxidation, decarboxylation happens when in the presence of oxygen. So theoretically, cannabis does not degrade, but they have had tests, I have heard, and I haven't had it confirmed,
I don't like that word either.
that cannabis or cannabinoids will degrade simply through the exposure of time, even in the lack of oxygen, light, and temperature fluctuation, and that it will degrade at a period of about 7% every 30 days. Now, I don't know, again, if that test in theory is true. A lot of the stuff we've been taught of in the past has now been proven false.
Right.
So I do believe, though, if you let something cure for too long, it does lose its value. I've tested this with small amounts personally,
Right.
and I can tell you that I found, stuff that I let cure for 9 months versus the stuff that I let cure for 6 versus the stuff that I had for 12. There really was no increased benefactor to any one of those. It was like once you reached a certain point, it was the maximum it was going to get.
It is what it is.
And really finding that point is going to vary based on the strain.
Right.
And going from there. And of course, that's a tough thing to determine. But, that's kind of like comparing it and saying, it's similar to wine. The winemaker is the one who's going to decide if the grapes are ready.
Yeah, but you'd never just, as soon as it got in the barrel, okay,
Yeah.
put it. I mean, you'd
Sorry,
never do that.
Couldn't let it, Jack Daniels. Sorry, we only have 3 here because the government says we can only have 40 gallons on time.
Right.
And we're not allowed to provide the 10-year soak for you anymore.
Yep.
You're exactly right.
That's
But the
wrong.
thing that upsets me is that we are actually affecting the medicinal outcome of our product, because it's been shown and proven that not only are the cannabinoids helpful when people ingest through combustion and vaporization, but so are the terpenes and the flavonoids.
Right.
And that's why cannabis is so essential as a complete package and not as a packaged pill.
Right.
Because that complete package has other things in there that are good. And when you take the time to cure it and allow those to really come out and present the full bouquet of the medicine, then the patient's able to really receive all of its effects and its benefits. So I think that to not have the ability to provide this legally is detrimental to the patient's health.
It is.
And I believe that is something that we should challenge. But I'm going to be honest with you, I'm chicken shit, and I ain't going to be the guy to challenge it, because I know what kind of inventory it would take to maintain my patient's supply in order to create products that have been cured for, let's say, a minimum of 45 days, which would be the standard I'd probably set. I think I'd feel safe knowing that if the product had been in the jar for a minimum of 55 to 60 days, about the same amount of time that it takes to flower a plant,
Right.
Ironically.
Including the first 10 days, 7 to 10 days or whatever.
Yeah, including that. Then it's actually going to be usable. It's going to be ready. It's going to be presentable, and it's going to be not really able to be much better.
Right.
And I think that's the key, is really trying to reach the pinnacle of its own production. So I don't know if you guys are willing to challenge, or if there's somebody out there who's already challenging. I'd love to hear stories. Right now, I know the biggest challenge is in deciding what is usable and what isn't. And I think that some of the challenges that we're seeing in court, to me, are absolutely ridiculous. I mean, for goodness sake, we're talking about live plants, and they're trying to say the cops are, well, not the cops. I don't want to blame the cops, but the prosecutors are saying that's usable. I'm like, are you kidding me? What do they look like? Horses? These are patients, dude.
Yeah.
You might need to do something besides cut it down.
You struck upon a point, though, that I've always made to people about arguments about the legal definition of insanity is a comparison to the psychological, definition of insanity, and they believe that it's some such thing called temporary insanity, and they'll use that in court cases, the legal definition
like
of it.
people like Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, they'll say, people actually, he wasn't temporary. He was always, you could see throughout his.
He's a little bit more permanent.
Yeah, well, it's like definitely, but see, that's the argument. That's the argument, because in psychology, there's no such thing as a temporary insanity. If a person's truly insane, it's going to be demonstrated throughout the behavioral spectrum. So largely, so that's the idea. Now you're striking in this case, in this scenario, it's like whose definition of what's usable is going to be accepted in the legal discourse. Because,
absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it really should be up to the patient to decide, not the caregiver, not me, because of the fact that even if I go through that entire process and then I find out that, whoa, wait a minute, I'm sorry, Toby, but this stuff that was cured for 60 days and is absolutely, couldn't be better than what it is supposed to be. I mean, my flipping Christmas cookie weed is the shit.
It is.
You know what I mean?
60-day cure. It's fat.
I think it's like, that's probably a 45-day cure.
Wow.
Right. I mean, right. Anyways, but yeah, think about it. And then all of a sudden, guess what? This strain doesn't work for Toby. Well, for Toby, it's unusable.
Right.
So even if I just gave Toby an ounce of it, now Toby's got an ounce of, to him, unusable product. Should that be counted against him if he sets it aside in the back of the cabinet and then gets another ounce?
For a rainy
If his ounce is a 1 ounce limit, and then what's he supposed to do with this? What is he supposed to do with that?
You're also bringing a point. It's actually connected to more of the mainstream pharmacological, things too. Certain types of, my dad was on Dilan for epilepsy.
Oh yeah.
But the generic forms of it didn't have. It was actually a compound drug. Dilantin is actually it's kind of a proprietal, and actually someone didn't have the phenobarbital in it. Some of them didn't have it. That amount, and so that amount, so he'd be getting Dilantin generic, but it wasn't doing what it was supposed to. He had normally intended, you had seen happen, with taking this one brand over the other.
Wow.
So I mean, and that happens within pharma. So people want to be dismissive. Well, these people are just hippies. They just want to smoke weed and they want a certain variety.
Right.
It's that's also happens in the realm of true pharmacology, the mainstream pharmacology.
Yeah. And that's what I was trying to point out too, as far as cannabis being the whole product, because of the fact that even if we could narrow this medicinal or the medicinal properties of cannabinoids themselves down, which they're working on it, believe me, you cannot discredit the medicinal properties of the terpenes and the flavonoids. They also have medicinal properties, and there are different presentations of those on different types of cannabis, and any person that is familiar with cannabis can tell you that simply based on the sense of smell and taste.
Yep.
It's very, very apparent. And to discredit those, I think, is to take away from the beauty of the entire plant as a whole, the way that it has been presented by nature, the way that it was intended to be used. So I think that, us that are in the business, we need to definitely stick to the creed of protecting the whole plant.
Yes.
Yeah, man. All right, John, thanks for the feedback on that, man.
Because I think that's
Dilatin
important.
is no joke. I mean, that's some serious hardcore medication.
Yeah, that's
right.
Yeah, and it's really hardcore. And people say, well, how come? Okay,
Is that how you
got
say
the
it? Dilatin.
Dilatin. It's like
Yeah,
it's
I've
for
heard people talk about that.
anti-seizure
before, like some
drug.
Serious reverence.
It's an anti-seizure drug.
You don't
basically.
take that unless you really need it.
Right, and he would had and certain time he was given one sometime. He was given.
So they gave him the off-brand, and it just wasn't
exactly.
working the same.
And when the shift in the 70s came about generics, and that's a good thing.
He got the Acme brand, but it wasn't even formulated the same.
Right, exactly.
He had a physical reaction to that because it was effed up.
Yeah,
And he started having some more seizures, and they started searching, back and say, well, oh, no wonder, maybe. So they started giving him the name brand that he had been using for years, and it disappeared.
I've heard of modern stories today with other types of prescription medication. The same scenarios happening. It wasn't with anything as serious as Dilatin, but man, I don't think that pharmacology is always the best way to go. I don't really want to compare that to cannabis because what we do, I think, is something holistic and something a whole lot better, and I think it's a whole different approach to medication, and I think that's what people got to wake up to because doctors have their place. If I break my arm, I'm going to go see an osteopathic surgeon. I think that's what they're called.
You're not going to come see me and let me.
Well, I don't think any kind of amount of grape leaves or berry juice or rainbow shit is going to fix my arm.
Right.
I need a freaking cast. I need somebody to put it back where it's supposed to go. Now, honestly, do I think my chiropractor could probably pop it back in and then we duct tape that sucker? Probably it'd be about the same thing as going to the hospital, getting the x-ray and all of that. At the end of the day, provided it's not a compound and there's not little bits of bone chunks everywhere, but all in all, think about it,
Yeah.
If I go like that and I wrap it and tell you blah, 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 and what is the difference? So, all right, guys, I think we got to roll. We're holding up our brothers. Here, man.
What's up?
Oh, he's like, we got time. And then we got Pure Pro Wrestling coming up here after the show. So if you guys can stick around after this podcast, we'd appreciate it. They do a lot of hard work here in the community, and I know they got some awesome events coming up. And they're awesome to watch here on the podcast at Flint Talk Radio. Definitely miss Chad being in the studios. I know he'll be back here with us next week.
Yep.
And that's it, man.
Awesome.
I'm ready to go outside and freeze again.
I'm not.
Cool. You guys have a good week. Thanks for joining us.
Have a good one. Be safe.
We'll see you.